Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this live broadcast. Synact Pharma is back here at our studio when they now present new data that they found in the EXPAND study. Standing beside me is Torbjørn Bjerke, CEO. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mike, and it's very good to be back here again and being able to talk directly to our shareholders.
Indeed, and I'll also remind the viewers to please ask questions if there are any. So, Torbjørn, to give some background to this, you were here about a week ago when Synact Pharma presented their EXPAND study, or the results from that. You didn't reach your primary goals, but now you present new data. What has changed here?
Yeah, I understand if our shareholders are a bit confused. We were a bit confused when we saw the first data. And as we talked about last time we were here, and last Monday, we got negative results in the overall population, and we did not really understand how, because it was quite different from the BEGIN study. So as we talked about last Monday, we started really to dig into the study and tear it apart and try to find explanations for this. And in that work, we also identified a subpopulation, which is a very relevant subpopulation, and I'll explain you why. So resomelagon is an anti-inflammatory drug, and it rebalances the immune system. So actually, you need to have an inflammation in order for it to work. And when we looked at our population, we looked at quite a few patients, and we saw that if you have a systemic inflammation measured with CRP, CRP is so-called acute phase protein. It's C-reactive protein. And you know, if you have a cold and you go to your doctor and you are afraid that it could be a bacterial infection, you measure the CRP. If it's a bacterial infection, the CRP is high or higher. Exactly the same with rheumatoid arthritis patient. If you're newly diagnosed one, if you have a higher CRP, higher than actually in the way we measure it, with as a high density or very sensitive method, if you are about 1, then you are starting to have an inflammation. So we looked into that. It's quite logic. Okay, anti-inflammatory drug. How does it compare in terms of the CRP patients, which then do have an inflammation? So we took a cutoff of 3, and why 3? Then we are quite sure that it is a beginning systemic inflammation, and we looked at the patient population, and we were so happy to find what we have released yesterday evening, and we're going to discuss during the day today, is that when we do that, and this is about 61% of the whole population, so yes, we lose quite a bit of power. However, when we do that, we see a good differentiation of the active and the placebo. The placebo arm is, according to us, is still a bit high. However, despite of that noise, we get this quite a good result. So in terms of the ACR20, which is the primary readout, we had, I'll just look here, 70.6% of the resomelagon patients achieved that ACR20, which is, as you know, a way of measuring the disease activity, compared to 54.3 in the placebo group. And when we let's say play a bit with the CRP, if you go even higher, you also get an increase, further increase in the primary readout. So that was good. But what is even better, Mike, and that's why from a drug development point of view I'm happy today, and that is because all the secondary endpoints goes exactly in the same direction in this study population. So you can say, yes, we have found a subpopulation. It's not the main population, it's not. However, what we find here is a consistency between all the different parameters. And we will show that for the webcast this afternoon. Let me take one example. We measure what we call the Health Assessment Questionnaire Disability Index. And this is really how the patients are assessing their disease. And if we take that at 12 weeks, which is of course the endpoint, then we get 60% difference between placebo and active. And then you can ask yourself, is this really relevant? Yes, it is, because this 60% is about 3 times above the minimal clinical significant index for that. So even the patients is in favor of resomelagon after 12 weeks. Another point is when we go in, and this is also important in terms of the validation of the data, and that is real data we come with today, is the fact that when you look at all the active in the study, about 83% with an active response on the active do have a CRP about 3. So everything is pointing in the right direction, and that's why we are so happy today. So yes, we found it. Is it logical? Yes, indeed. You know, anti-inflammatory drug treats inflammation, and if we don't have inflammation, then measured by CRP, then you might not need that. So very relevant population from a commercial point of view is the biggest one, and these are the patients we want to treat. So this is good news.
Critics might say that this is cherry-picking data. Is that the response that you would give to them then?
I understand why they say so, because you know suddenly we come with good data. But from the reasons I just said, I think it is important to say that, you know, even we have identified this as a relevant population, it shows good efficacy. It also shows, and we'll show that in the afternoon, it shows that the efficacy of resomelagon increases over time. If we compare to the JAK inhibitors, often you see that after 8 weeks it stabilizes, and then the difference between the placebo and the active in JAKs are getting smaller. What we see so far, and we have 12 weeks now, right? We see the continuation of efficacy on the active group. So I'm really eager to see, okay, what more than when resomelagon has been out there for more than 12 weeks, what do we then get? So from a drug development point of view, I think that these data support that we have an activity. We don't get any good significance, although close, but not any good significance because of the sample size, because we have 61% of the whole population. But I think it's very good news, and it's not really cherry picking. It's hard work going through the trial, really picking out what we believe is a relevant population, and then people can judge.
If we simplify then and sort of turn it around, why didn't the candidate show significant difference to placebo for the whole population?
Yes, and this is we still believe that if you are below 3 and don't have any systemic inflammation, then resomelagon will probably not have any efficacy. So this is also important for further clinical trials, because now we can select the patients based upon that. So we believe that we have learned quite a lot on this study. However, the overall study with the primary readout in the whole population is still negative.
There's a viewer who asked the following questions. How many patients is it about who responded with a 70.2% in the active arm?
Sorry, I didn't.
How many patients is it who responded with 70.2% of the active arm?
Oh, I don't have that number in my head. We can prepare prepare that. But remember, that is the median number. So there will be patients above that, and there will be patients below that.
Very well. But with this in retrospect then, and with the new data that you presented, I'm curious how shareholders should sort of how do you say it, interpret this new data. Was the EXPAND study a success?
Yeah, if we take it from our own position then, from the company position, we believe these data very much indicates that we have an active compound, and we can see that by many components that we will talk more about later today. However, it justifies a further development, and the good thing is that we do have more data to come. We have the MRI data with the mode of action. This will come hopefully in the end of September, which will hopefully add on the knowledge about how resomelagon works. And then we have the result study. Remember that the result study is a bit different group of population or patients. The result study include patients that do not respond to this low or to this methotrexate treatment. They have low response rate to that, and then we add AP1189 to see if we can resensitize the patients. And we just looked into, on a blinded way, how many patients do have a CRP above 3, and we got the answer about 70%, 70 or 71%. So that is good. And then with the new data here, of course, we can look upon the result in that way as well. But I think, from my point of view, I am cautious optimistic going forward in terms of the result study as well. However, that will be shown. Could
you elaborate a bit on that? I mean, in the bigger picture, how should, or what will happen now with Synact?
What will happen now with Synact? I think Synact will be continuing the development of resomelagon. As I said, we know quite much more now than we did a couple of weeks ago, especially on the selection of the patients, and this is key in clinical development. And then you can say, oh shit, why didn't we see this before we did the study? However, we did not, and we thought that maybe resomelagon is treating the whole population, but you need to have an inflammation, and it's so it's so logical, right?
I know that our viewers and as well as some of your investors are very curious regarding your Chief Operational Officer, Thomas Boson, who sold his shares recently. What happened?
What I can say is that I don't know. So he was not part of the assessment in the assessment group. That was Jim Knight and Thomas Jonassen and myself in the last several days here. What I can say from my point of view, and I know that I'm sharing this with most of the team here, is that we are very committed. We are extremely committed to this. We don't want to sell shares at this point of time. We believe in Synact Pharma. We believe in resomelagon going forward. So I will never sell shares at this. Now we need to rebuild it. We need to, you lose trust in a flip second in this industry. Now we need to build up. And I hope that the data today will be the beginning of that rebuilding of trust in the community.
Could you tell us more about that? I mean, you're now moving forward. How will you sort of communicate to shareholders?
As you have realized, after I became the CEO, we have increased communication. Of course, last Monday we needed to communicate some bad news.
Indeed.
Today it's a bit different, but we'll be out there, and we'll communicate. We'll face the shareholders and explain where we are at any point of time.
So let's face them then. There are some questions in the chat below, and
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
read them up.
Yeah.
So one of the questions is, should CRP be one of the inclusions in criteria? Then you should have better results, I think he means. Was CRP measured at the beginning of the study and the effect was seen after 12 weeks?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. We have discussed this internally, that CRP will probably be a selection criteria in further clinical trials, because this is the relevant inflammation marker that we can go for. So absolutely, we believe so. And in terms of the 12-week study, yeah, but you know, we have consistency from ACR 20, consistency week by week for all the secondary endpoints, and that gives us a good hope and good belief that these data are real.
What does this new data mean for your substance? Will you be able to redo your phase 2?
Phase 2? You know, now the focus is on the DMARC IR, and DMARC IR is a very, from a commercial point of view, very attractive group of patients. So if we can show, you know, that the data from result part A supports further clinical development, our focus will be on the DMARC IR patients. And then we have the begin and expand in the quite you know, difficult first line patients. So we will not do anything more in the first line. We'll focus on the DMARC IR and further. And by the way, in terms of business development, I believe that the results coming out today is positive for that. When you have a potential partner you're talking to, they want to do exactly what we have done the last 1.5 weeks then, really to dissect the data and look for things like we found here. Consistent data, consistent results. Does resomelagon work? And yes, we believe it works. We believe it works very much in this population. As I said, and I think that is extremely important, 83% of those that had a positive response to resomelagon had a CRP about 3.
I will take the final question now. Is the improvement in the subgroup that you presented here today, is it focused on the subjective measures that were not found in the objective study?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. What we can see, and we can elaborate more on this later today, is that when we come later on in the study, from about week 8 and onwards to week 12, then the things matches. So those that do have objective efficacy do also have subjective efficacy, and we will show this with the Health Assessment Questionnaire Disability Index, the HAQ score, which is quite important. And here we see this 60% difference after week 12, which is 3 times clinical relevant. So yes, you know, slow start. However, when we come up to the 8 and 12 weeks, then this matches. And this is what we found out the last week here.
Well, Torbjørn Bjerke, thank you very much for being here and answering our questions.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.